On December 11, 2005, in Shuiyuan Village, Canaan Township, Hualien County, Taiwan. The morning started off just like any other peaceful day. Villagers were out walking and exercising when someone noticed something unusual lying among the rocks beneath the Shuiyuan Bridge. Curious, a man approached to get a closer look. When he realized it was the naked body of a woman, he immediately stepped back in horror and quickly alerted the police. Clearly, it was a lifeless human body. What had happened? How could such a horrific crime occur in a quiet rural village? As the story unfolded, it would shock everyone. This was no ordinary murder case. Soon after police and forensic investigators arrived at the scene, curious villagers gathered at both ends of the bridge to watch the developments. Under the Shuiyuan Bridge, the police cordoned off the entire area with tape. In their preliminary investigation, authorities discovered the half-naked body of a woman lying in a shallow rocky creek. It appeared that the body had fallen or been thrown from the bridge. The vertical drop from the Shuiyuan Bridge to the creek below was about 49 feet. But investigators were quick to point out this was likely not the original crime scene. Police and forensic specialists began examining the scene. The victim was identified as a woman of the Truku ethnic group, one of Taiwan's indigenous peoples estimated to be between 20 and 30 years old. She was wearing only underwear. Most notably, there were distinct strangulation marks on her neck. Blood was visible on the back of her head and neck, along with injuries to both legs. It appeared her body had been dragged. No identification documents were found. As officers expanded their search of the area, a group moving north into a densely overgrown field made another horrifying discovery. Another naked female body was found just 164.04 to 196.85 feet from the first one. A second female victim. No one had expected this. With the discovery of a second body, a wave of troubling questions immediately flooded the minds of the investigators. Were they dealing with a double homicide, some kind of cult ritual, or were they now facing a serial killer? Preliminary analysis of both corpses confirmed that the two women had already died before being thrown from the bridge. The severity of the case escalated dramatically. It sent shockwaves throughout Taiwan. Authorities decided to escalate the case to the county level. Chang Chunlai, deputy chief of the Hualien Criminal Investigation Division, described the features of the first victim. Her left eyebrow had likely been tattooed. Her build was slender and she was approximately 5 feet. She was wearing only sheer boxer-style underwear. On her feet were red, white, and orange checkered socks. She also wore a black bracelet on her left wrist and a black ring on her ring finger. Around her neck hung a necklace with a black heart-shaped pendant. The second body was slightly chubbier. A notable identifying feature was a black mole at the corner of her left lip. Her estimated age was around 25 and she was about 5 feet tall. Similar to the first victim, she was only wearing a pair of black underwear with a tiger head printed on it. Both were of Saya descent and shared several similarities, leading investigators to believe the two victims likely knew each other. But the strange thing here was that both bodies were semi-nude and had been thoroughly cleaned. Why was that so unusual? After questioning nearby residents and searching for a long time, no one had any recollection of their clothing or appearance. Based on clues like the tiger print underwear, investigators speculated that one of the victims may have worked in the entertainment industry. They began combing through crowded places like karaoke bars, nightclubs, and entertainment venues to gather more information. However, no leads emerged about the identities of the victims or who the suspect in this double homicide might be. The two bodies were immediately transported to the Forensic Examination Center. The biggest challenge at this point was identifying the victims. So where should they begin? News of the double murder began to spread. Just 984 feet from the crime scene, students at Tutu Technical College were growing anxious and fearful. Initial findings by the Hualien police suggested both victims were women aged 20 to 25 who worked in the entertainment industry. One of them weighed about 154.32 pounds and was suspected to have given birth before. But unexpectedly, just the following night, the identities of both victims were confirmed thanks to a breakthrough made by a police officer from another precinct. According to reports after receiving the double murder information that had been circulated to local departments, this officer recognized one of the victims from a previous investigation involving a suspicious motorcycle. Tracing that motorcycle, the police discovered its registered owner was a middle school student, and they confirmed that this person was likely one of the female victims. But didn't the initial police report describe something entirely different? Why was there such a huge discrepancy? Just one misjudgment about the victim's age, off by over a decade, had sent the investigation down the wrong path entirely. Even people within law enforcement were shocked by how unacceptable the Hualien police's mistake had been. The investigation had to be restarted from scratch. A large task force was dispatched to check everywhere the girl had been. The information was eventually corrected, and based on a critical detail, a pair of plaid socks, investigators connected the case to a report of a father searching for his missing daughter. Upon following up, they found out that the two victims were a Miss Lee and a Miss Chen. Both were students, and more than that, they were best friends. It is reported that the girls Chen and Lee were both middle school students and considered to be problematic. They often skipped classes together and frequented internet cafes. Among them, 15-year-old Chen had already graduated from junior high school, while 13-year-old Lee was confirmed to have dropped out partway through her education. What kind of grudge or offense could girls like them possibly have committed to deserve such a tragic end? Several individuals and teachers reported that the girl surnamed Lee was considered a troubled student. She dropped out of school, rarely stayed at home, and often wandered around aimlessly. In contrast, the girl surnamed Chen was regarded more favorably. She was described as gentle, well-behaved, and respectful, often helping teachers with various tasks. Although both girls had poor academic performance, they maintained good relationships with people they met online. School officials stated that they had also lost contact with the two students. Autopsy results confirmed that neither of the young girls had been sexually assaulted. The primary cause of death was manual strangulation, and it was determined that the murders occurred just a few hours before the bodies were discovered. In fact, the forensic report noted fractures in the victim's tracheal cartilage, indicating that the perpetrator must have been extremely strong. Moreover, both girls had visible bruises on their arms. Investigators believe there were at least two perpetrators involved, one who carried out the strangulation and another accomplice who restrained the victims. At this point, the identity of the prime suspect quickly came to light. Right after the father of the girl surnamed Chen identified his daughter's body, he immediately provided the police with a crucial piece of information that his daughter used to date a boy, and he had always been suspicious of this young man. The boy was commonly known as Xiaoguo. The police followed this important lead and quietly went to Xiaoguo's house. When they arrived, an elderly woman informed them that Xiaoguo, whose real name is Guo Luyo, was not home. He had gone to Taipei for work, and she hadn't heard any news from him since. This elderly woman was none other than Xiaoguo's mother, Lin Liana. As soon as Ms. Lin provided this information, the police immediately sensed something odd. They didn't fully believe her words. A few officers began observing the surroundings and noticed several pieces of men's clothing clearly belonging to a young adult hanging on the balcony outside the house. Even more suspicious was the fact that the motorbike Guo usually used was still parked at home. The investigators seemed to realize something, so they calmly waited and proceeded with a search. After thoroughly checking Ms. Lin's house, they discovered the following items: 2 pairs of men's underwear. One was a fitted pair of boxers, and the other had a tiger head pattern. Both were found inside the home. Do you remember what the 2 bodies were found wearing at the original crime scene? Coincidentally, both of these types of underwear are known to be for men. When Chen Jinqiao, the lead investigator from the Jian branch, asked whether the underwear belonged to Xiaoguo, Ms. Lin claimed they didn't. She said they were hers. The investigators grew increasingly suspicious, not just of the suspect, but also of his mother, Lin Liana. In addition, inside the family's washing machine, they discovered a pair of men's jeans with visible bloodstains. But that wasn't all. Upon further inspection of the jeans' pockets, they found 3 suspicious purchase receipts from a convenience store, all time-stamped at 5:30 a.m. After gathering all the evidence from Mrs. Lin's house, the police immediately requested Lin Liana's cooperation in the investigation and began taking her statement. Not long after that, Guo Luyu unexpectedly snuck back home and was promptly taken into custody. Authorities also managed to apprehend all 4 young male suspects believed to be involved in the double murder, who had been hiding in the Wenshan Mountains. Shortly after Guo Luyu, under police escort, made his first public appearance, the slightly chubby young man with an unremarkable face and a motorcycle helmet was only 20 years old and was now the prime suspect in the brutal murder of the 2 high school girls. Alongside him were 4 alleged accomplices, all young adults, with one of them identified as a transgender individual. Police began interrogating Guo Luyu. He appeared visibly uneasy and nervous. They questioned him about the pair of jeans found in the washing machine at his home. Why were there bloodstains on them? Guo claimed the blood was his. However, upon examining his body, officers couldn't find a single wound. So then whose blood was on those jeans? They also reviewed the surveillance footage from the convenience store by tracking the 3 receipts found in the jeans pocket. The results revealed that in the early morning hours of the 11th, the camera captured Lin Liana walking ahead, followed by the 4 other young male accomplices. According to the receipts, the items purchased at that time included a large quantity of instant noodles, canned goods, and snacks, all types of food typically meant for long-term storage. Weren't they clearly planning to go into hiding after committing the crime? Facing the police at the station, and with mounting evidence laid out before him, Quach Lu, you finally confessed to his crimes and revealed everything. But what truly shocked the investigators was yet to come. The remaining 4 accomplices revealed that there was someone else behind the entire plan. The mastermind of it all was none other than the long-haired, glasses-wearing woman Lin Linga, his own mother. Quach Lu Yu's mother, Lin Lienga, was officially summoned to the police station as one of the suspects, and it turned out she was the true mastermind behind everything. At that moment, the entire investigation team was stunned. No one could believe that Lin, who appeared to be nothing more than an ordinary housewife, was the one orchestrating such a meticulously planned and horrifying crime. According to the suspect's testimony, Lin Liana's original plan was to transport both bodies to the beach and dispose of them there. However, while they were en route, the group spotted a police vehicle on the road. Fearing they might be discovered, they quickly changed direction and drove toward the Shuiyuan Bridge instead. Seeing that the area was deserted and no one was around, they decided to throw both bodies off the bridge and fled the scene as fast as they could. Yet when authorities later found the 2 bodies beneath the bridge, they noted something strange. Aside from the nudity, the corpses appeared to have been meticulously cleaned. Why? Shortly afterward, the group actually returned to the scene. Fearing they may have left forensic traces behind, they wiped down both bodies again and stripped all remaining clothing. Initially, police believed this was an attempt to mislead investigators to make it seem like a sexual assault case. But according to Lin Liana, the one who ordered the return to the crime scene and the removal of the victim's clothing, the true reason was much more disturbing. She admitted it was out of fear that the spirits of the dead would return for revenge. According to local folklore, she believed that by stripping the bodies, their souls would be unable to return and haunt her. Police then brought 2 of the suspects to the Nantun River in hopes of recovering the victim's clothing and the clothes worn during the crime. However, all the items had already been discarded into the river and could no longer be found. On the other hand, police also escorted a young man surnamed Kai back to the original crime scene to reenact the events. Sitting atop the flood embankment, the suspect trembled non-stop, his hands rubbing together nervously, his face filled with terror. It was right beside this very stone that Kai had used it to strike the 2 girls on the head. Afterward, he strangled one with his bare hands and stuffed clothing into the mouth of the other, causing both victims to die from asphyxiation. This led to the pressing question: what was Lin Liana's motive? What drove her to carefully plan such a brutal murder? Guo Lu Yu and the girl surnamed Chen were believed to have been childhood friends, and the 2 had once shared mutual affection. However, a few years earlier, Guo made a serious mistake. He began a secret relationship with Chen when she was only 16 years old. Soon after, Chen's father and her family filed a lawsuit against Guo Lu Yu. In an attempt to resolve the matter quietly, Guo's family offered the girl's side a settlement of 100,000 new Taiwan dollars. Both Lin Lianya and her son Guo hoped the issue would be handled privately and without public scandal. However, both of them unexpectedly still received a summons from the prosecutor and were officially charged with sexually assaulting a minor under the age of 18. Guo Lu Yu was filled with resentment. He had lost both his money and his reputation. Lin Liana began to suspect that the Chen family had orchestrated the entire situation to extort money from them. Consumed by suspicion and anger, she ruthlessly developed the intent to kill. However, the family of the girl surnamed Chen firmly insisted that they had never received any form of compensation or settlement offer. In fact, Quach's father was completely unaware of what was going on. As more evidence came to light, the details of how Lin Liana and her son carried out the crime that led to the deaths of the 2 girls became increasingly clear. It was Lin Liana who, out of fear that her beloved son would be branded with a criminal record for sexual assault, orchestrated the entire murder plot with a series of calculated, chilling steps that sent shivers down the spines of investigators. This mother not only incited her son and his friends to carry out the murder, but she also assigned specific tasks to each person involved in the crime. First, she instructed the young men, including her own son, to invite the girl surnamed Chen to an internet cafe under the pretense of negotiating. She even handed her son sedatives and told him to slip them into the girl's drink to drug her. However, the girl surnamed Chen was cautious at the time, so she brought along another girl surnamed Li, and neither of them drank the beverage. But this too had been anticipated by Lin Liena, who had already prepared a backup plan. When the plan to drug the two girls failed, Lin Liena instructed the group of young men to lure them to a flood embankment under the pretense of continuing the discussion. When the negotiation fell through, one of the 5 young men struck the girls on the head with a rock and then strangled them with his hands. The remaining accomplices took turns subduing the victims. At 3:00 a.m. on the 11th, after the 2 victims had been killed, Lin Liena assigned specific tasks for disposing of the bodies. The 6 individuals split into 3 motorcycles, with Lin Liena and her son leading the way to scout the route. The other 2 motorcycles each carried 1 victim's body sandwiched between 2 of the riders, with 3 people riding per bike. After that came the cover-up phase as previously described. Lin Liena had calculated everything down to the smallest detail. She even organized task assignments and trained each accomplice in their roles. She feared that just one small mistake from any of these young men could lead to their immediate capture by the police. Even more disturbingly, after the crime, she handed sedatives to the 4 accomplices, excluding her own son. She instructed them that if they were ever caught by police, they should swallow the pills immediately to end their own lives, thus ensuring that no one would reveal anything to the authorities. All of this was done solely to protect her beloved son from going to prison. Due to her limited understanding of the law and fear that the family scandal would be exposed, Lin Liena didn't dare to investigate or think things through carefully. Instead, she placed blind faith in unfounded rumors. She believed that as long as the girl surnamed Chen died, the lawsuit would end. However, sexual assault is a public prosecution crime in Taiwan, meaning it cannot be withdrawn. And so in the end, the trial for the double murder of 2 high school girls still had to take place. The judge in the first instance trial concluded that the 6 defendants had acted in collusion and planned the murder together. He condemned their behavior as brutal and inhumane. Lin Liena admitted to selling her property as a form of atonement and even knelt in court to apologize to the victims. Based on what was considered a relatively cooperative and remorseful attitude from the defendants after committing the crime, the court decided that the death penalty was not necessary. As a result, all individuals involved were sentenced to life imprisonment. Among the accomplices, 2 were found to have intellectual disabilities and cognitive disorders related to gender identity. Therefore, during a retrial, their sentences were reduced to 20 years in prison, while the others retained their life sentences. After considering the financial circumstances of the defendants, the court ruled that Mrs. Lin's family and the accomplices must pay compensation to the victims' families amounting to a total of 11.59 million new Taiwan dollars. On December 12, 2008, the Supreme Court rejected all appeals, officially closing the case, after it had gone through all 3 levels of the court system. A tragedy took away the beloved daughters of 2 families. The girl surnamed Li, though not involved in the matter, still met a heartbreaking end. Nearly half a year has passed, yet the father of the girl surnamed Chen still often looks at the family photos and videos from past outings. The longing for his daughter is etched clearly on his face, a father who has never been able to accept the final verdict of this case. The room of the girl surnamed Chen has been left exactly as it was when she was alive. On the desk there are still photos of her and her close friend surnamed Li. Her mother often enters the room unable to bear the longing. She even once dreamed of her daughter. That brings us to the end of this case. Thank you all for watching until the very end of the video. Goodbye and see you again in the next episodes.